Hey, this is Josh Modell from the Talkhouse Podcast. I am super psyched to tell you about a new podcast on the Talkhouse Network called Bjork, Sonic Symbolism. It's presented by Talkhouse and MailChimp Presents. The podcast explores Bjork's eclectic life and music in her own words, in conversation with two of her closest confidants. Every episode is a window into the textures and timbres of each of her albums and is filled with Bjork's music, including rare and unreleased versions of her songs. Subscribe to Bjork, Sonic Symbolism on your favorite podcast platform today.
Hi, this is Carrie Brownstein.
This is DJ Premier.
This is Darren Aronofsky.
You got the RZA right here.
Rose McGowan.
Radiohead.
Aisha Tyler.
Tribe Called Quest.
Fred Armisen.
Prince Paul.
Javier Munoz. Seth Meyers.
Tracy Cosmos.
Flying Lotus.
Hi, we're Chaim, and you're listening to the Talkhouse Podcast.
Hello and welcome to the Talkhouse Podcast. I'm Josh Modell. On this week's episode, we have a pair of French electronic music pioneers who recently teamed up with a DJ who's been responsible for some of the most exciting production of the past 20 plus years, Braxe and Falcon with A-Trak. Alan Braxe and his cousin Stephane Quem, aka DJ Falcon, are legends of French house music going back decades. Braxe was one-third of the trio Stardust alongside Daft Punk's Thomas Bangalter. They famously released just one song in 1998 before splitting up, but Music Sounds Better With You is a classic of the genre. Falcon's biggest claim to fame might also be Daft Punk adjacent. He co-wrote and co-produced their song Contact from 2013's Random Access Memories. And though they've obviously been acquainted forever, Braxe and Falcon only recently came together for a project, and it's pretty amazing. Their debut EP, Step by Step, includes a killer title track with an appearance by Panda Bear. Braxe and Falcon will make their live debut in November with 2 US shows, one in New York and another in LA. Check out a little bit of Step by Step right here.
I'm gonna take it step by step. There is some kind of poison and disorder. Going step by step, so I'm gonna break on past the border. Going step by step, it feels like there's something in the air.
Now that EP also features a remix by Braxe and Falcon's old friend DJ A-Trak, a superstar of the electronic world whose resume makes me feel very lazy. As a young guy, he was a championship-level turntablist in his native Canada, which led to a years-long role on stage with Kanye West. His career continued as a headlining DJ and producer in his own right. He's known both for creating his own sounds and remixing big names. He also runs the vaunted Fool's Gold label and collaborates with lots of other folks, including Armand van Helden in Duck Sauce. A-Trak's latest project is a collaborative album with elusive hip-hop icon Cam'ron called You Wasn't There, which comes out September 23rd. Check out a bit of All I Really Wanted from that upcoming record.
In high school, I was on the court getting buckets, bitch. And I started getting duckets. Can't lie, I'm in love with this. The art of getting money, man, my motto was like fuck a bitch. By the time I turned 30, I completed my own bucket list. I don't take threats lightly, careful who you fucking with. Now to make you way more famous than your publicist. Love, I get the stubbing it. My life, they want to publish it. They ain't got enough money, so I keep dubbing it.
In this chat, Braxe, Falcon, and A-Trak talk about the sonic intersections of house music and old school hip-hop. They discuss the ups and downs of the forced COVID break, and there's a lot of gear talk, which is a whole different thing when you're talking about samplers and keyboards instead of guitars and pedals. It's a lot of fun. I hope you enjoy it.
All right, hello.
All good?
Mm-hmm. How are you?
Yeah, fine.
We're good.
Where is everybody?
South of France. I'm in Biarritz. You know Biarritz because you've been here. When was that? We're talking 15 years ago or
something like that. Yeah.
You've been here only once or?
No, at least twice.
I remember when we tried to go everybody in the water with the surfboard and everything. Yeah. So I'm in Biarritz right now, which is southwest of France. I'm like 30 minutes away from the Spanish border, San Sebastian.
Yep.
I'm in Toulouse, which is in between the Atlantic Ocean and the Mediterranean Sea. So I'm like 3 hours drive from Stephane.
I like this lesson in the south of France geography.
You've been to Italy in holidays?
Yeah, I was in Italy in early July for holidays, and then the rest of July I went to Europe a few more times for gigs. I was kind of like going back and forth to Europe in July, and then I went to Asia last week for just a few days. I ended up going to Bali and Jakarta. I was supposed to go to Tokyo, and then that got rescheduled.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are they start open Japan again?
starting, but that's part of what's been complicated. But yeah, they're starting to open. It just takes longer to get the visas.
So you in New York right now? Where are you?
I'm half New York, half LA. So right now I'm in LA.
Okay, cool. So basically you went to Europe right after the release party somehow, a little bit?
Yeah, I was right after the release party. I went to Italy on holiday, and then I went back to America for a few days, and then I did some touring in Europe for like the rest of July. And like everything is a little hectic right now with touring, especially in Europe, like crazy flight cancellations all the time and all that kind of stuff.
We've been through this in July, like a lot of kids. So you're spending a lot of time in Europe, right?
This summer, finally, yeah, because, before the pandemic, I would go to Europe every summer. And then now it was the first time in like 3 years that I was able to go this summer. So it feels good to go back. And you guys are back to playing shows for the first time in a long time, right?
Kind of, yeah.
How does it feel to perform again?
Oh, it feels good. I mean, yeah, we had a lot of gigs in July.
Yeah.
Like a lot.
But it was easy because it was in France mainly. So not too much travel. But I mean, it's fun. It's good fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, but coming from like big 2 years with nothing, almost nothing, to every 2-3 days.
Yeah.
It was, it felt good, to be honest. There's part of us like, it's some kind of a release, like it's just good, like to celebrate with people. But we had to stop a little bit in August because it was a bit excessive, a bit too much, I think. So we had some relaxed time in August, and now we're going back on the road.
Nice.
When you're back from a touring like that, do you find it easy to switch on the machines and go back on music, or do you need some time to focus, or?
I definitely need a little bit of time to recover from the trips, physically, mentally, like across the board. Coming back from a trip, especially something that's international, that's even more tiring. Definitely takes a few days to be able to get back to working on music. And what's a little bit challenging for me is that I'm also, kind of taking care of business. I have my record label, and there's like certain things that I take care of every day. So I'm rarely able to completely take some days off when I come back from a trip. So sometimes what I'll do is almost focus only on the sort of project management and email and catching up with phone calls for the first few days that I get back from a trip, because I know that I'm not really going to be able to work on music right away.
Yeah.
That kind of work is a little bit more robotic. So I just try to like get that stuff out of the way. And after like 2 days of that, then I'm maybe in a better mindset to try to work on music.
You feel better when the paperwork is done.
Yeah.
I mean, until it's in your mind and you know you have to do it. It's a bit like it's not good for making music. And when you make music, is it like a standard day, or you switch on at you go to the studio at 9 a.m. and you work during the day?
Not that early. I'm kind of like an afternoon worker.
Mm-hmm.
And in LA, my studio is at my house, which is where I am, this room here. In New York, I have a sort of outside studio that I go to.
Mm.
But in any case, usually I have, a couple things that I catch up with in the morning, and I get to work on music in the afternoon. I don't do the same thing every day. Some days it could be more DJ work. Some days it's just sort of catching up with new music and organizing stuff for sets. There's days where, there's something that's already in the works musically that I'm just kind of, continuing or catching up on.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's days that are just, exploration, trying to come up with ideas. I work kind of slow in the studio. I'm not the type that can make a whole song in a day or two. A lot of times I'm just, messing with something that I've started and coming back to it many times.
You sometimes spend 1 day on a snare drum or iPad? Yes.
Yes.
How do you feel about that? Do you feel guilty? Do you feel good?
I feel a little bit crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you sometimes realize that we are listening to hours and hours and hours? I mean, thousands of hours of loops. In fact, during our lifetime, it's it's amazing. I mean, it's crazy. It's sometimes I realize that the amount of music we've been listening constantly.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's just the same loop when you're working on a track, you're working on a section, and you can listen to it for like 6 hours.
All three of us make music that is very loop based. Like there might be another kind of, composer or producer who's, that might be working on compositions that really change a lot during the length of a song. And they might obsess over one section of the song, but then they'll go do, other movements in the song. I think all of us are really just look for these magical loops that end up becoming the song and just, obsessing with the groove and the little things that make a loop catchy.
Since day one, the day we start, doing electronic music, we still really got this obsession of the ultimate loop, those loops that, and I don't know, it's just something that just a few musicians kind of share, but I guess it's something that we share, all the three of us.
Yeah.
I know with Alan, sometimes when we making music and there's those type of loop, we know that we can catch those stuff together, because people sometimes don't get it. It's just a matter, you're in the studio, you're making music, you're tweaking knobs and whatever, fader, and sometimes stuff happens. How do you know that it's the right loop? And it's just a matter of taste sometimes. I really trust Alan's taste, and I think it's cool to be two in the studio.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's hard to catch those moments. Or you go crazy in the studio, listening the next day, and you're so disappointed. But we're searching those magic loops. That's something we have in common, I think.
But Falcon, I think you're known for being the loop guy. You've always had an ear for loops.
When I did the live with Thomas Bangalter, it was all based on loop with sampler, drum machine, and Thomas was playing a keyboard on top.
By the way, which drum machines and samplers were you using live in those years?
So we were using the Roland S760.
Okay.
That's the one Thomas used from the beginning.
I don't even know it.
So it's just the converter are really, really, really good. And the filter is just basic, but it's just good.
Okay.
But it's really tricky to use this one. But then when we start doing this, it's when Ableton start to show up. So I got used to play with loop since day one with Ableton, and I couldn't go back to the vinyl and DJ in a classic way.
You were using the very early version of Ableton, right?
Oh yeah, first one. I got I got contact with Ableton. I mean, it was Etienne de Crécy and Alex Goffer. I used to live on top of their studio.
Okay.
So Etienne and Alex Goffer got contact by Ableton. They call me and say, okay, look, they're going to show us this software. And since day one, that was what I was doing with the sampler. And because I was touring at the time in Australia and I was bringing the vinyl, I was into surfing. So I was bringing my surfboard, my photography, and then I saw this Ableton and said, whoa, that's what I'm doing. But at the time, remember when you show up on the gig with a laptop at the beginning?
Oh yeah, people thought it was crazy.
People, they really hate this.
Yeah.
So this is why, thank you for saying that, but I think I got really more than your regular DJ into the loop because of the Ableton, using Ableton since day one.
Hey, this is Josh from the Talkhouse Podcast. If you want a behind-the-mic look at some of the most groundbreaking musicians of our time, check out the Broken Record podcast from Pushkin Industries. Music industry icon Rick Rubin, along with Justin Richmond, Malcolm Gladwell, and Bruce Headlam, sit down with the artists you love to talk about their lives, inspiration, and craft. You'll hear revealing interviews with beloved artists like Michael Stipe, Jack White, Missy Elliott, and Nas. Also, up-and-coming stars like Michelle Zauner, who talks about her big plans for the dreamy indie pop band Japanese Breakfast. The best part? You get to hear these legends in their element, playing their hits live. With episodes featuring artists across rock, punk, hip-hop, jazz, and every music genre imaginable, there's something for everyone on Broken Record. Listen now, wherever you get your podcasts. Hey, Talkhouse listeners, it's Josh Modell. I wanted to tell you about another podcast I think you'd enjoy called Sound and Vision from KEXP, which digs into the stories behind the music. There are 2 new episodes each week, ranging from artist interviews to industry news and commentary. Just in the last couple of months, they've had everything from a roundtable discussion about Beyoncé's Renaissance to insight from DJs who have broken new artists, as well as interviews with musicians like Sharon Van Etten, Odessa, and killer mic. Find a topic that interests you, and maybe you'll find your new favorite artist in the process by searching KEXP's Sound and Vision wherever you listen to podcasts.
During COVID lockdown, with Duck Sauce, with Armand Van Helden, we started doing like a YouTube interview series, a bit of a podcast, kind of like we're doing here on Zoom.
Yeah, I saw with David Guetta talking about the colony.
Okay, so yeah, the one with David Guetta, yeah, he was saying that, but he was also saying that you were always known for having the best loops, like that was your like reputation.
I was obsessed, and this obsession is still here, like really fresh. It's like searching for gold sometimes, you know, like there's this unexpected thing. And I think this is what keeps us all excited. Just manipulate sample and equipment in general. Maybe people don't know when you're talking about happy accident in the studio, but with Alain, somehow we kind of obsessed, and we somehow get the equipment. We bring you sometimes those happy accidents.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Like modular synth.
Yeah.
For example.
For people who might not know, there's something about physical equipment that will create these accidents or these things that are not planned, more so than something on the computer, I think. And I work almost entirely in the computer, but I'm aware that it's a little bit harder to get something that happens that is completely unplanned. I think because on the computer, you're telling the software what to do. There's a lot of intention with everything that you're doing on those programs. Whereas if you're just using some old machine and messing around with knobs, you're probably going to end up with something that you didn't even know you were doing, but your ear catches it. Cool, what's that? Right?
Yeah.
When we did this remix swap, a couple of months ago, I mean, starting point of the discussion was to do everything with the SP1200. And for the people who are listening to us, the SP1200 is a very old sampler. It's really
iconic sampler,
but very super limited, and we were super motivated to do the remix with this concept in mind, working with SP12. And I really admire what you did, because you did a post and where you said, okay, that was the starting point, and it ended up with the computer, which was the case for us as well. We did everything with the computer. I mean, almost everything.
Yeah.
It's really hard afterward, once you get used of the computer, it's hard to combine both worlds, I think. It's really pleasant to work with the SP1200 or the MPC3K. But as soon as you try to sync it with the computer or to integrate it with the computer, it starts to be really painful.
They're so slow. Well, for me, it was interesting to start using the SP1200 sampler and drum machine. That's also something that happened for me during lockdown, in the last 2 years. When I was growing up and getting into music, I was mostly listening to hip hop. And the SP1200 is very well known in hip hop, for people who are listening. Like you said, this is a sampler that was made in the late 80s. And it was one of the first samplers that allowed you to cut up sounds, drum sounds, and pieces of samples that were from records. But there was, like you mentioned, a lot of challenges with the fact that it has very short memory, but it also has a very recognizable sound. And that sound, this very gritty sound, became kind of a signature sound for a lot of early 90s hip hop records. So I knew it as the sampler and drum machine that a lot of my favorite hip hop producers were using in the early 90s. People like Pete Rock, and Lord Finesse, but also some producers from the South, like Manny Fresh, or producers from the West Coast, like the Alcoholics, or even Cypress Hill. Some of the greatest hip hop artists use this sampler that had a really recognizable sound. And then at some point in my musical education, I realized that there were also house producers who used it. And I realized that a lot of the classic music that you guys made were on this sampler that I, in my head, up until that point, only associated with hip hop. And Alain, there was a video that you made for Future Music, I think, right? Which is a British production magazine, where you showed how you used the SP1200 for your track Running. And there's a lot of producers who shared this video, especially once, like someone put it on YouTube at one point. And once it was on YouTube, everybody was sharing it, being like, whoa, look at how he used, this old drum machine that has like only a few seconds of sample time. And I realized that I went back and listened to, a lot of these great French touch records and, a lot of the stuff on Cri d'Amour and Roulé, and recognized this sound that I knew from hip hop, this very gritty sound. And it, for me, when I realized that drum machine was being used by some of my favorite French house producers, it's almost like two parts of my mind collided, because but it also helped me understand why some of the house records that I loved felt so familiar to me. And just realizing that specifically it's the same equipment of my favorite hip hop productions that was being used on these house productions. Even to what we were just saying about, all of us having an ear for loops, I think, there's an approach to house music that I think is still very hip hop based.
It is.
When you're just using loops.
Yeah, it's the same thing but different tempos. Yeah, exactly. And especially French house. Yeah,
French house is kind of just fast hip hop.
But it's funny how these machines in fact it's a bit like having a co-producer with you in the studio, because the sonic characteristics also drastic that you have a co-producer who is doing 50% of the job for you.
Yeah.
But with full limitation as well. And the sound is so gritty that there is not much you can do with it after if you EQ too much or if you... But I'm I'm super nostalgic of this. I bought this machine like 25 years ago, and I'm really nostalgic of the time I switched it on for the first time and I was learning. And it's funny because when you know it, you're pressing the knobs super fast. You look like a cashier in a shop, like
yeah.
But it's very organic. It's super pleasant.
Just for people to understand what we're talking about, is that there's a few of those machines which just sound good, straight.
No matter what you put in it, it sounds good. Yeah. And
also, if you take a drum machine like 808, 909 from Roland, you just do the simple pum chak, it will groove somehow. Yeah. And you do the same with the software, and it's nothing happening.
It's true that there's something about some of the classic pieces of equipment that...
It's working straight.
Yeah, that have kind of a magic groove in the sequencer also that is actually surprisingly hard to replicate on the computer.
Maybe the one of the best example is the Linn drum.
Yeah, for sure.
When you think of the Linn drum, it's 12 songs, I think. It was released in the 80s. It's still in use today. It's on thousands of records. It still sounds current. It will never get old. It's quite amazing. And this machine is just 12 drum sounds.
Yeah.
And so simple.
Prince used a lot of Linn drum. The first one, LM1, and for those who want to search on this. But did you know that they did a new SP1200?
Yeah.
So I'm using this modular sampler they're doing. It's called Assimilator. They did a 35 years anniversary. And now they're doing a new model with double the sampling time.
Yeah.
And an SD card. Yeah.
It's cool that they're doing that. It's been interesting reading about the process of trying to recreate these old machines, because it makes you realize that, we talk about this like magic sound of some of these old machines, and sometimes it comes literally from the chips, like the microchips that they were using. And some of them were chips that had kind of little defects or that, that were still new technology. And, later on better chips were made, but something about those early chips affected the sound, gave the sound a color. And to recreate these old machines, they have to find, chips from another era.
Like the 303, when it was released, it was a joke for everybody. Roland didn't sell those machines, and started a new sound, acid and everything.
Right.
But it's funny, like, to sing also compared to a regular musician. Like okay, you buy a new guitar. Okay, it takes maybe 1 hour to get used. But us, when we buy new equipment, it's really time consuming. It takes sometimes weeks, and it's sometimes a different logic. Like there was those instruments, like it didn't work in my head like a atrak. I'm sure it's a really good machine, but it didn't fit in my head. It's not the same logic. But it's crazy to think that we're spending a lot of time trying to get comfortable with those equipment instead of musicians that's straight. They don't waste time. They just do the music.
Because we don't. Well, but let's be honest, we don't really know what we're doing. Also, like we don't really know how to pick up a traditional instrument and compose a song. So the music that we make is kind of the result of just figuring out some sort of workflow with some equipment where we're able to find, like we were saying earlier, these little moments of magic. But I like when you said that the machine is kind of our collaborator, and we have to get to know our collaborator so that we can work with it.
Yeah. But it's funny to think that, some of us start 25 years ago. I mean, if we were learning equipment 25 years, we should be. But I think there's a part of us we don't want this.
Yeah, we don't want to learn. We don't want to know how to do too much.
I'm obsessed with this excitement, unexpected moment that you get with those electronic machines. That's what still get me excited.
Even as a fan of both of you guys and your music, it's really exciting to witness both of you making music again and making music together. And you're cousins, right?
Yeah.
When I first heard the new EP, it also made me think in the general sense of how, some of us will just, like you said, keep an obsession or a fascination, almost like an almost childlike fascination or wonder for a certain type of sound for such long periods of our life. I mean, maybe that's something that we can talk about too, just like staying fixated on something, for decades, whether it be a type of groove or influences, things that make us think of our childhood or whatever else, like certain sounds, certain types of synths that we remember from our childhood, and we stay fixated with that for such a long period.
Did you know that one of the creative source, we used to have this sample since 25 years?
No, I didn't know that.
Yeah. So
the song that I remixed.
Yeah. I got this sample. I found it on my old zip from my first sampler.
Okay.
It was an EMU E6400, I think. Yeah. But yeah, we were like somehow fascinating that, okay, there's this sample that I catch like 25 years ago. And we're like, okay, it could make a cool track.
That's funny. And there's other parts of that song that were sampled for some rap records also. There's some hip hop stuff.
Okay, yeah. I think I saw it.
The Creative Source song, yeah. There's an old Kanye West and Kanye West and The Game song that used like one part, and then there's like this New York rapper Jadakiss. He had a song that used another part. So it's a song that has like all these little moments, and then someone takes 2 seconds here and make a whole song out of it, and someone else takes 3 seconds there and makes a whole song out of it. So that's pretty cool too.
Yeah, but it's so good sometimes when you're listening to the original. Like I remember when Flower, the Armand Van Helden track, Flower,
yeah.
I'm so in love with this track. When you're listening to the original, and I don't know, he's like, good catch.
Would you consider that the lockdowns and pandemic situation was good for you or bad, or because
both?
Both?
Yeah, good and bad.
Yeah,
for sure. I mean, of course, on the negative side, it was kind of crazy to lose work for a lot of time, and I think for some of my friends, it was even tougher. I think I'm lucky to be at a place in my career where I could take some time off, and it's okay. I was nervous because it wasn't planned, but I definitely I'm friends with a lot of DJs who just kind of play the local party in their city every week, and for a lot of those friends, it was even scarier to lose work suddenly. It's hard to call it good because, so many people got sick, people lost their parents and their relatives, and, so it was obviously terrible and really frightening. But somewhere in that, there was sort of a forced change and a forced stop where there's some positives that came out of that.
We just started to play again like 1 month ago, and the crowd in clubs is slightly different than before.
Yeah.
Did you notice this?
there's definitely like a level of energy where you can tell that people are excited and happy to go out. I also think there's a generational difference. There's younger people who are going to shows now who were too young to go out before the pandemic, but for me with the time at home, fortunately there's some experimentation that came from just being home, where I was able to start using different pieces of equipment and even just sort of take time to think about music projects with a little bit more freedom and imagination, because I didn't have to go to the airport in 2 days, So to be able to take many weeks at a time to just imagine, that was a welcome change.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, and we can plug a few projects.
Oh, plugging projects. We could maybe plug a dinner together. We have 2 shows in
the US, right?
We are coming to in New York in LA in November.
Yeah.
So let's take a coffee somewhere.
You're gonna be around, Alain? You're gonna be around?
Yeah, I I have to check the dates, but I'll make sure that I'm either in LA or in New York.
Okay, cool, fantastic.
Yeah, I really like the club where you're playing in New York and elsewhere. It's really great.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So for sure we'll grab dinner.
And so maybe it's one more opportunity to thank you for the support when you came to the release party. We really, really appreciate. We have this crazy picture of me, especially. I'm so drunk. Like last night, I ate this picture, but it went everywhere. That's the way it is. But thank you so much for keep supporting. I have some special memory with you when we've been all here for DJ Mehdi.
Yes,
and you came with your brother straight.
Yeah.
It's just something. That's something I really appreciate with you and your brother. That your elegance, your natural elegance to be with us, to support, to be here. Just something simple, but it's not common to a lot of artists. So it's a good opportunity for me to thank you and your brother for always stuck behind us.
Well, thanks. But even just to give my perspective on that friendship and what some of that stuff meant to me, when I like I mentioned earlier, I started off as a hip hop DJ mostly, and when I got into electronic music around the mid 2000s, it was still in North America. There were newer sounds that were happening in electronic music around this time, and it was barely getting to North America at that time. But in Europe, there was really interesting things going on with the sound, and I became close friends with Mehdi and with Pedro and the Ed Banger crew also, and I realized that we had a similar path of growing up with hip hop and then getting into electronic music kind of with that ear, which by the way is also why Armand Van Helden and I are close friends also. It's a similar thing of like shaping your ear with hip hop and then approaching house with that foundation. And when I met Mehdi, I realized that we had a lot of taste in common, and he was an incredible DJ. And we started DJing together, and we did a lot of shows together, him and I. And he helped bring me into the house world and the electronic world. And then when I started Fool's Gold in North America, I would also try to bring him to my world, especially in New York. And so we did a lot of exchange like that. But it was a very, very close friendship, based on shared taste, shared interest, even beyond music, all the way down to Seinfeld.
Yeah, I think
clothes and culture.
I think DJ Mehdi got this from Philips Dar and Hubert, from Cassius, which we were also really close to them.
Yeah.
So at the end, we all have this thing in common that just we're curious. Super curious.
For sure. It's like a record digging mentality, always digging for samples and trying to discover. And, I was always very grateful that through my friendship with Mehdi, the sort of rest of like the French crew really welcomed me. And, when you mentioned at the beginning of our conversation that I've been to Biarritz, when I went to Biarritz, it was with Mehdi and his family on summer holidays.
Yeah.
And it was, really spending summers with my DJ friends where where it becomes more than just work colleagues or whatever, when it really becomes like shared families.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, all that stuff still touches me a lot. And I'm still having fun going back and forth between hip hop and house. I have an album with kind of a classic New York rapper, Cameron, that's coming out in September. That's kind of like, for me, it's almost like a love letter to New York hip hop, where I got to make a record with one of my favorite rappers, but I'm approaching it still, like a music fan, where I try to imagine what's the album that I would want to hear as a fan, because I think for us as DJs who also make music, we always put ourselves in the position of the person that goes to the record shop and hears the record for the first time, and the expectations of the fan. And I think it's cool to make music while still imagining that you're just a fan.
It's like we did with the Step by Step EP. We try also to explore different tempos, but somehow we were super stoked that, like you said, the fan, they could feel it's us somehow.
Yeah,
it looked like us. So we were.
Well, you guys have such a sound. You have such a sound always.
Thank you. That we were stoked about this because we knew somehow going from club scene to 73 BPM. But we stoked that people. So cool. So
great.
Hope we catch up on New York or next show in LA. And please, are you going to be in Europe soon? Or?
I'm done with the Europe trips for a little while, but I'll catch you guys in the States.
Great, fantastic,
cool.
Yeah.
So big kiss to your brother.
Yes, he says hi too.
Merci à toi.
And thanks for taking the time. Always a pleasure.
Of course.
Merci et à bientôt.
Merci. Ciao.
Yeah, see you. Bye bye.
Thanks for listening to the Talkhouse Podcast, and thanks to Braxe, Falcon, and A-Trak for chatting. If you like what you heard, please follow Talkhouse on your favorite podcasting platform and check out talkhouse.com for all kinds of great written features. This episode was produced by Myron Kaplan, and the Talkhouse theme is composed and performed by The Range. See you next time.